Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, everybody. Krishna Vedula here from Indo-Universal Collaboration for Engineering Education, and it's again a pleasure to have this wonderful webinar through a collaboration with UMass Lowell, Global Entrepreneurship Series. And thank you so much, Ashwin, for coordinating it and arranging it and bringing all the great speakers that you're bringing in. And today we have another one of our outstanding speakers, and I'll let Ashwin do the introductions. Go ahead, Ashwin.
Thank you, Dr. Vidula, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to our 2021 webinar, Global Entrepreneurship Education Webinar Series. This is our first series, and we have a very good lineup for the rest of the year, and we look forward to having you participate. This morning or today, we will have a great presentation from Mr. Dan Ostrowski, who is the director of the Weiner Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Wisconsin, the School of Business. Over the past 14 years, he has taught thousands of students and is the recipient of the various school-wide teaching awards. Prior to joining the University of Wisconsin, he was CEO and chairman of Parts Now. During his tenure, the revenues at the emerging supplies company increased from 26 million to over $400 million. And it was primarily because of the organic growth that he managed and led. With the assistance of a private equity sponsors, he led the successful buyout of the founder in 1999. Before joining Parts Now, consultant at McKinsey and Company with focus on strategy, supply chain, technology, and finance. He has also worked for IBM, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, and Yasuda Fire and Marine Insurance in Tokyo. So Ostrowski currently serves on the board of First Business Financial Services and the National Guardian Life Insurance Company. He has previously served on the board of various startups, mid-sized companies, and nonprofit organizations. He graduated from University of Wisconsin-Madison with a bachelor's degree in economics and computer sciences and received an MBA from the Harvard Business School. Please welcome Mr. Ostrowski to present High Impact Entrepreneurial Bootcamp for STEM, PhD, and postdoc students. Dan?
Thank you. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the warm introduction and very honored to be part of this and happy to help out and share some information about this program, and we'll be happy to answer questions any of you have on it. So, a little bit about, Wisconsin and the University of Wisconsin. To give you some context, is University of Wisconsin Madison is the flagship university here at in Wisconsin, and is one of the very large land grant institutions here in the United States. So we have about 40,000 students in total, and a very large graduate program as well, and strong in research that goes back decades, actually more than decades, 100 plus years. In fact, they released the top federal research funding for last year, and the University of Wisconsin was number 8 in the nation in that. And we are always over $1 billion in research funding that takes place here each year. So very deep expertise in many of the sciences, especially in the life sciences. A lot of great inventions there. That being said, well, we're definitely in the top 10, and actually been in, even higher in the top 10 over the years in research. If you look at the commercialization of the research, it's not as high. We're probably in more of the top, 20, 30 there. And if you look at startups coming out of the university, it has been lower than that. And there's an opportunity to do that. And that's a little bit of the context that we have. So we are fortunate in one of our very esteemed alumni is someone by the name of John Morgridge. And you may have heard of him. He is the He's a graduate of our program who then went on and had a very successful career in technology, culminating in becoming the CEO of a little company called Cisco. When they were, I believe, 30 employees, he became the CEO and took them public and took them to, I think when he left, there were 10,000 employees, and they were one of the most valuable companies in the stock exchange, and continue to be there. So he did very well and a very successful entrepreneur, retired from that to teach at Stanford Business School, which is his other alma mater. And he actually helped come up with this idea because of some things they were doing at Stanford that he wanted to share with, it would be useful at Wisconsin. And so the program we developed specifically for the graduate students in the STEM fields is something we call the Mortgage Entrepreneurial Bootcamp. And we designed it to be 1 week. And that is so that it can 1 week during the summer, and it is non-credit, which is, I'll talk a bit about later. It's focused on specifically technology entrepreneurship. So you can think a bit about what you're covering in many of your technology entrepreneurship programs merged with what you do in exec ed. We tried to take probably the best of those two worlds and combine it into a very intense 1 week experience. We have 65 students each year. We get more than twice that many that are applying for the program. And we've been fortunate in that this is actually no cost to the students. And it's not an inexpensive program to run, but we've been, donors have supported it. Originally, it was actually John Morgridge who felt strongly enough about it that he was willing to invest in it, and in fact still comes out and teaches in it for us, but we've been able to get some other donors because of the success of the program. And that's a bit about high level what the program is set up to be. If you look at what type of students are in the program, it is a very diverse program. And on the left here, if we look at what schools they're coming out of, it's a real mix of green being engineering, which is the largest, but still not a majority. And then very large number coming out of the medical school, and then our Ag and Life Sciences. We have a College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, which has a very strong biochemistry, genetics area that is, actually very world-renowned there, and is so a lot of kind of interesting research goes on there. And then our Letters and Sciences, which would contain computer sciences, physics, a couple of those other chemistry, those STEM fields. And then also a fair number coming from education and pharma as other areas. In a typical year of those 65 students, we probably have 30 different majors in the room, which in itself is actually a great opportunity for the students, and many of them comment on the fact that this is one of the few opportunities they've had to work with students from outside of their building. Because when you can become a grad student in many of these fields, you are pretty much locked down in your lab, and your world gets fairly narrow. And this is an opportunity to meet people from some other areas, which has actually resulted in one marriage and a bunch of people that have met co-founders through the program. So kind of a nice perk, which wasn't in our original design, but has been a good outcome there. And then on the right of this chart, the students that are, the vast majority of students are PhD students. We have then kind of the one area that has grown for us the most is the postdoc, which is the here. In fact, originally, the first year we did this, we had quite a discussion, debate, and well, are postdocs even eligible? Because they're not quite a student, but they're, as you know, they're a bit of a hybrid, and we weren't sure if that would be a good fit. So doing what we teach our students to do in entrepreneurship, we experimented. We kind of let in some postdocs, and they ended up being actually some of the most entrepreneurial people that we've had in the program that have gone off and started things. And this is, so we've been actually probably a very pro postdoc bias, and fitting them into the program has been a boon for them, and brought in some real quality, high quality people. I should also say that this technology, when we're teaching entrepreneurship, I think there are kind of two main ways, rough categories of entrepreneurship out there. One is that you have an idea and you're working on an idea. I teach a lean startup course, and any of those where you want the students to be really working on an idea and they learn a lot from that. And then the other is more of the kind of theoretical, foundational, where you're teaching the concepts and that aspect of it. This program is very much that sort of program. So we don't expect the students to have an idea when they come into the program. Some of them do, but it is absolutely not a requirement, and they won't be, even if they do have an idea, they won't be directly working on it during the week. They can obviously use some of the materials to help move their idea forward, but it's meant to be something of use for students that don't have an idea, but have an interest in entrepreneurship, or maybe you just have a glimmer of an idea at this point in time. So when we reflect on the program and what's been kind of made it a success, that has worked really well, is the fact that it is this very intensive program. The 55-hour week, we have the students from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. And we include the meals like you would in an executive ed. So they get 3 meals a day. And those are actually often working meals at night, where they're studying, they have study groups and will eat and read the cases during that. So they're told don't plan on being able to go back to the lab, clear your calendar, you're all in on this. And if you're not willing to make that commitment, then that's fine, but you're not in the program. And we've had great response from the students that they have really lived up to that, and it's been a good way that I think makes this a very impactful experience, more so than just a normal class. Well, we also learned that for many of the graduate students, doing a 1-week program during the summer is actually much easier in a fit than trying to do a couple hours a week in a normal semester class. As they move on to their research and they're working in the lab, they sometimes feel that that's harder to make that semester-long commitment. And in fact, some of them are limited to what classes they even take because they've moved on to dissertator status, and they find that a very challenging thing. So this has actually been a benefit. It fits better with many of their schedules, if you will. We also have learned one of the criteria we use for acceptance is faculty buy-in. So you want their advisor to know what they're doing. So it's one of the questions we have on our application form is, who's your advisor and are they supportive of this? And that kind of prompts them to have that conversation with their advisor. Because it's been rare, but when we have had problems, sometimes it's students that don't really communicate with their advisor as much as they should. And after they've been in class for a day or two, all of a sudden their advisor is like, where the heck are you? Why aren't you in the lab? And that's not a good, that's not a good situation for the students. So if they have that beforehand, it's very helpful, and also has many of the advisors will then say, okay, tell me after this week, I want you to lead a session for our grad students of what you learned, or you sit down with me and tell me what you learned, because I've got some entrepreneurial ideas as well. As at least our institution, it's very rare for a professor, if you're a tenured professor, leaving to do a startup is fairly rare and probably isn't even the right answer for many of them. But it's not at all uncommon for them to have the grad student who's been very involved in the research and done a lot of the work to be the one that will go off and lead that. We also learned that the right mindset of the model to follow is more of the executive ed one, where you really mix things up. A 12-hour day with most of that in the classroom is actually, if this was all plain lecture, would be really hard to do and wouldn't be a good experience. So we go out of our way to mix up different speakers and different types of experiences that we do have some lectures, we do some cases, we do some panels, we have a different kind of hands-on learning, small group experience as well. Whatever we can do to just mix it up and keep it from being a boring 8-hour or boring day of sitting in a lecture hall. And the other thing we've learned is linking into some very specific orgs on campus can be quite helpful when you're trying to recruit target audiences. So, for example, the Women in Science, a very active group on our campus. We also work with the Postdoc Association for those students, and many of us always are trying to increase the number of underrepresented minorities in our STEM programs and in entrepreneurship programs, and in especially STEM entrepreneurship can be a challenge. We've actually found some very good success in working with our School of Education because that is an area that has a large number of underrepresented minority graduate students, and quite in the world well, education is typically not thought of in the STEM definition. Ed tech, and many of them have ideas that are software that will help education in many different facets, and are very interested in learning more about that so they can move their entrepreneurial ideas forward. And that's been a great recruiting ground for us as well. So giving some thought to on your campus where the specific groups you're after may reside, and creating a pitch for them. The other thing that I would say we probably undervalued when we originally designed the program, but we've gotten such good feedback on as one of the key learnings, is at the end of the week, giving them the next steps. Because these students that we have are really, they're smart, they're brilliant, they're very high IQ, but many of them have never taken a business class, much less an entrepreneurship class, and just entrepreneurship is very daunting to them. They think that's something they want to do, but literally don't have an idea what steps go into it, and what would be how, if they had an idea, what they would do. At the end of the week, they come out of it with actually a greater appreciation for business skills, which is one of the, we do a survey, and that's one of the things that we've found, is that they are more likely to want to work with a business person. At the beginning, they kind of are like, what business people don't know anything. So by the end, they're like, yep, okay, I wouldn't be badly to partner with someone who has the business skills. But then in turn, they also realize there are lots of resources on this campus and in this community that will help them. And they don't actually have to have all of the answers before they do something. They just have to know who to talk to, and have a real good idea of, depending on what they need, what they can move forward to do. So that's a good outcome of this, that is what we've heard from a lot of the students. Because quite often what we hear or what we see happen is these students don't come in with an idea, but after the week they go back to their lab and we change their mindset. and they're now looking at the technology on the shelf, their research, other things, and looking to see what problems could we solve with that. They come in very much with the traditional research, academic research mindset of what can I do that's never been done, that's interesting, that's cool, and is a very innovative technology. And by one of the key things we talk about is, well, successful business requires you to actually solve a customer market problem. And when you say that, it actually takes a few times before it really sinks in. But once they hear that, it changes their outlook on things. And then a year or two later, we'll start to see them in our classes, in our competitions, in the entrepreneurial community, because they now have a problem they're working on solving. And that's the startup idea. So that's beyond just the academic, giving them that confidence and a pathway to move forward has been very helpful. To be fair, though, I also need to say there's certain things that have not worked that we've tried, and in the kind of full spirit of entrepreneurship and learning, we have wrestled in fact, we set this up originally to be something that would be a 4-credit option, because we thought that may be more attractive to students and more of more value to them. And we actually heard from them that no, that would be probably more, they don't need the credits, and it could be more of a hassle because of limitations they have and other issues. So they viewed this as they're driven enough individuals, they don't need the credit to perform. It wouldn't, giving them an exam at the end of it wouldn't probably change much at all as far as their involvement and drive in the program. We also have experimented with law students, and this is an area where I compare law students to salt in a meal. A little bit of salt really helps improve the meal. Too much ruins it, and that's what we found. Having some law students mixed in that are interested in technology entrepreneurship, they may have some experience in it, actually adds quite a nice angle to the discussion. But when you get too many, they take over. Because that's what you do in law school. You talk a lot. You are very accustomed to sharing your opinion in class, and that in many ways you can end up with a classroom discussion that's really controlled by the law students, and that is not healthy for the dynamic, or even, quite honestly, I will say the content, because they approach it very much from that law perspective, which isn't always the only or right perspective. So having some but not too many is a good angle there. And as I mentioned, this isn't an accelerator. We've got multiple other accelerator options on campus or in the community, and that is something that sometimes students are very much driven about their if that's what they want, this program isn't a good fit for them. And we try to make clear that you're not going to spend an entire week perfecting your business model and doing all the lean startup approach that you could do in other areas. And the fact that these are really bright students, but they've never taken a business class, means that all of us as instructors really need to give some thought and improve on the way we communicate, because there are terms that, if we're teaching in a business class, are very fundamental that will be totally lost on these students because it's not the world they're in. And so you have to be careful how you explain it. They're super smart, but just aren't familiar with some of the terminology. A couple of the key topics, and the topics themselves, I'd say, are probably fairly standard. I'm not sure they're topics that I would that those of you who teach technology entrepreneurship would say, like, oh, that amazing you're teaching that in there. We cover a lot of different areas, but do it, I think it's more how we deliver it that's more unique than the content of what is delivered. But we do have these topics covered, and also, as I mentioned, we pull in people from outside on the community. So the IP and legal is taught by our friends at WARF, the Wisconsin Alumni Research Foundation, which is our technology transfer office at the UW, which has actually been around since 1925, first technology transfer campus or group on a college campus in the US, and goes back to the vitamin D enrichment was when they got started. That was their first patent. And they teach that. We bring in panelists, and the really kind of great thing now that we've been around for a few years is our panelists are now the alumni for the program. And that is very energizing for the students to have people that have been through the program just a few years, that maybe were literally in the same lab that they're in or in the same building, that are now doing some interesting things and sharing the perspective, and are very good about saying how this program really kind of got them started down the path for entrepreneurship. This is a little harder to read, but I'll kind of put it out there. This is what we call it, our kind of program nutshell, which just shows what's being covered each day through the week. And I will bring your attention just a couple items here that I think are somewhat unique. We do some pre-work on basic accounting to help alleviate. There's some short videos we have them watch on just some of the terminology of accounting, because that's an area that will help as they read cases and do that. We then also have most evenings it's a working dinner where they are reading the next day's materials and are going to learn about that. To prep for the day before. We try to always end the day with something that's fairly active and high energy, because it's a long day and the energy levels kind of start to drop. So that's when we'll do a case, we'll do some exercises, what have you. Then we have a celebratory dinner on a Thursday night, and this is one that we've been doing from the beginning, where we have it as a bit of, it's a celebratory but also a networking opportunity. So we're able to invite in our entrepreneurs from the community, other people associated with our center, and the faculty advisors for these students and the students themselves, and and all the instructors, and I have a nice a dinner and program, and that is, I think, gives a certain aspect of almost a graduation celebration, and also allows them to meet people that in the community that could be helpful as they go forward. One of the other benefits that we've mentioned or noticed in this is it's a great platform to engage with lots of other people in the area. And as I mentioned, the Tech Transfer Office was one of the early supporters of it as well, and continues to be involved in both the teaching and it can help that get started, and has seen numerous patents come out of alumni from this program. In fact, the very first, WARF has just started doing more direct investment from a kind of their own VC fund on campus, and the first two investments they've made are alumni of our program here, and that's kind of neat to see from these using the alumni of our program that are tenured faculty here at Wisconsin, and are some of the better inventors that we have on the campus, and that's only been a few years. They also, great way to bring in investors, local entrepreneurs that are very, to really kind of be impressed, I'll say, with the quality of the students in the types of questions and just the energy from them. They come out of that kind of like, it's one of those classes where if you teach it, afterwards most instructors will say this is probably the best teaching experience I've had, because the students are so smart, don't know much about it, but are interested in the topic, and are just a lot of fun to work with. I mentioned the funding originally was John Morgridge, who I should also mention did very well at Cisco, well enough that he's a billionaire, and he and his wife Tasha are both from Wisconsin, two of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. I mean, they're just wonderful individuals, and have also been incredible donors to the field of education, and specifically the University of Wisconsin, and have given hundreds of millions of dollars to the university to support many different programs and across the campus and actually across the state as well. As a thank you to what do you get a billionaire as a gift? The foundation had the idea of the mortgage program. This boot camp was one that he had helped instigate and still comes back and teaches in. In fact, the final case that we cover is his Cisco case, where he's the new CEO of this 30-person company called Cisco, and what do you do? But we were able to provide him and Tasha with a surprise gift of 1.5 million. So it endowed the program, and he no longer had to support it, and it was renamed in their honor as well. And it was really one of the high points of my career in this announcement taking place, because like I said, he and Tasha are such wonderful people, and to surprise them and have this program that he obviously cares about and is so tied to, and now to kind of live on for eternity, if you will, with their name, was something that donors really enjoyed giving to it as well. And we're starting to actually see some benefit too in the recruiting of graduate students and postdocs, that various departments are saying, this is something that helps set Wisconsin apart by having this sort of a program, and the ability for our students to actually get into the MEB programs over the years is something that will help them pull in better grad students. I'm going to share a couple metrics, because and this is actually, I'd say, almost a little bit of a best practices as well. We really, from the onset, did a lot of tracking of what the students thought coming in, coming out, and what they thought of the program. And so many of you are probably familiar with the Net Promoter Score, which is a scale that goes from -100 to +100. It's you probably have gotten these questions: how likely are you to recommend this product or service to a friend, and on a 10-point scale. And if you put I think it's 9 or 10, you get 100. If you put in 7 or 8, you get 0. If you put in 1 to 6, you get -100. So that's how it ends up on this kind of -100 to 100 scale. And it is something that world class is considered probably 50, 60. The premier, like the Apple iPhone is, one of those products. There, Nordstrom's is, another kind of a service provider. Very hard to get that high. You can have negatives. Your cable company, is one that's often held up as the minus, they're kind of below 0. We end up at 96. I mean, it is it's almost absurdly high, but it is, the students come out of that with some of these quotes that I have posted as well. A really life-changing experience for them, and very appreciative of it. So we're always good to track that. The students have started a consulting, the alumni have started a consulting group because they're interested in the business aspects. So they actually have started a nonprofit that charges for consulting, and they work with many smaller startups and technology companies, because these are students that have PhD level knowledge of a field, little bit of business, but can help do customer interviews and do other analysis for them on that. And that has been successful, and it's predominantly students that are alumni of this program. We also have had numerous businesses started by our alumni, and I love updating this statistic, and as of just the last couple months, it's over 180 million has been raised in revenue from companies that have been in alumni from the program. I would also want to mention a couple other things that we did unique for the online world this past year, because we can do it in person. So we pivoted to online, and we decided to do panel discussions on careers. And this is partially because a lot of the students in these programs actually don't even know these sorts of careers exist. They're, as a PhD in some of these fields, they kind of assumed I'll either be in the academic world or I'll be working in a research lab, and not realizing the many other areas that could use that skill set that they've developed. And so we held that, and had brought in numerous alumni for these panels, which were very, very well received by the students. I'm going to share just some outcomes, and then we're going to move on. Many of these students have gone on to great careers in the academic world, and at a lot of different institutions throughout the world. My personal favorite story, though, is this university off to the right, Jimma University, which is in Ethiopia. And this was a student, an alum of the program, who emailed me one day because he actually graduated with his master's in biomedical engineering from Wisconsin, went through the program, and had wanted to always had real interest in Africa, so ended up getting a job teaching biomedical engineering over at this university. And early on, they said, well, we want to increase our entrepreneurship training. Who here knows anything about entrepreneurship? And he said, well, I took this week-long program. And they said, okay, you're the expert, you're teaching our entrepreneurship class. And he, not quite panicked, but a little bit of excitement, called and said, okay, I kept my binder of all the readings. What else should I be doing? And he became the expert for teaching entrepreneurship, technical entrepreneurship at this university. Lots of big firms students have gone on to in really also across the world, some top-notch areas, and in many areas they didn't even know existed, especially the consulting. We have people at McKinsey, BCG, Bain, all the top firms that didn't even know that they hired PhDs from the STEM fields, and that's been, and venture capitalists, Flagship Pioneering, and some others as well, just open up these new career fields that they didn't know existed. Here in Wisconsin too, we've also seen a lot of these students go to work for the companies that make up our startup community, and established companies throughout our state, which is a land grant university. A public land grant university is something we're always cognizant of. And the ideas and the founders, just the different areas that they've gone on to, have been in a wide range of different fields, different outcomes, and throughout the country, and actually throughout the world, where they have started these businesses. I will just mention that we've also had quite a bit of success on, one of the things that we have here in Wisconsin is the Governor Business Plan Competition, which is a annual competition. Hundreds of companies enter it, and they have multiple kind of runoffs and judges for the best of business, the business plan competition, business idea that is presented. And the As I said, on the average year, they'll have 200 plus entries. The final 12 are all the companies that have stars on this, are those that made the final 12. We actually have had 2 that have won, they've been named best business in the startup business plan in the state over the last few years. This is something that really never was happening prior to this program. It typically was not former students that were doing this soon after they graduated. And ironically, we do not teach anything about how to write a business plan in this, but the quality of the ideas are that. And the 2, I'll just briefly mention Novamoto, which is a lease-to-own solar power in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So it's a Madison-based company, but their customers are the villagers in the DRC that are off the grid, and they've created a both product and a business model that works there. And they have raised I think it's probably around 1 million, and have thousands of customers. So they're up and running. And Embed Biosciences is a fertility test for women using saliva. So instead of kind of managing the woman who started it was she is a PhD, but also a mother and had trouble getting pregnant. So she created this product that kind of is far less invasive than blood draws and that, using saliva, that can help women monitor their fertility health. And that's the other idea. So kind of wide range, super high tech ones to even a non-alcoholic hop iced tea company in Boulder, Colorado, but a wide range. We also have had one of the more unique alumni experiences. On the right here, Maya is a PhD student in food sciences at Wisconsin, who, with her lab mate, entered the Amazing Race, which, if you ever watch this on CBS, is the competition where you go around the world kind of racing around solving puzzles, and they ended up winning. So there's 2 PhDs in candy. Her expertise is ice cream, and which is fitting for Wisconsin, and they ended up winning $1 million on that. So we haven't included that in our fundraising numbers, but that was probably one of the kind of more unique alumni experiences that we have. So I've kind of talked for a while here. Hopefully this gives you a good overview of the program and some of the things we've learned with it. We'd love to open it up for questions now.
All right, great, thanks. Very fascinating presentation, Dan. Amazing.
Okay.
All the stuff that you've done, really good. Let's open it up for questions. I'm going to read them out, or unmute anybody who would like to talk. So we're going to start with good friend Samuel Mukasa here. Samuel, I'm going to unmute you and see what you have to say. Here you go, Sam, go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this wonderful talk, Dan. My question is whether this boot camp is open to international students residing outside the United States. And secondly, given that we have a COVID-19 pandemic right now, I'm wondering whether you've gone to remote learning for at least the next year or 2.
Yeah, good questions. And the answer is, for the first one, the audience is strictly University of Wisconsin students at this point. So it's open to international students that are matriculating at UW Wisconsin. And I'd say about half of our students are from outside of the United States in the program, but they're all University of Wisconsin students. That is one of the requirements, that you have to be enrolled at UW in one of these graduate programs mentioned. And then, yeah, your second question is very timely. We just made the decision a few months ago, based on how things are playing out, that we're going to do a abridged version this summer, which will be online only. And because we don't think, and who knows, but we don't think things will be kind of settled down enough at the beginning of the summer in particular to do something in person as with regard to COVID. We do think by next year it will be. I mean, those are fingers crossed, and I think we're all hoping that, but it's going to be an online one and abridged, because I don't know about you, but none of us think that the kind of 8-hour or these 12-hour days in an online world would work at all. So it's going to be, we're stretching it out over 2 weeks, but we're going to do an hour and a half session each day instead. So that's kind of our pivot, if you will. So hopefully a year from now I'll be able to tell you how that worked, but we're going to have to hold off for another year, which I feel bad about, but I think is the right answer given the situation.
Okay,
Well,
thanks. Yeah, Sam. We have a question from Ashwin Mehta. Come in, Ashwin, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Dan. That was a great presentation. How do you select these students? What will motivate them to come to this bootcamp?
Yeah, another good question. That is, I'd say we use a few key criteria, and one is we do look for this faculty sponsorship, and it doesn't cost the faculty anything. It just means that they're kind of on board and we're not going to have a problem there. The other things we look at are we actually kind of alumni recommendation. So if someone says that they're alumni, someone else in my lab went this here and told me it's the absolute best thing, that counts for something. We have them write a short statement of why they think this would be a fit, and that's probably the most valuable thing that we have, because it just is explaining why they think this would be a good fit with their career, and that filters out people that they have an idea what they want to do with their career, but this isn't a good tool for it. I remember a few years ago, I had a PhD student in physics who said, I want to become a quant bond trader. And so I think this would be helpful. And you're just like, well, this is not going to be a good experience for you and a good use of your time. And that's why one of the more extreme examples, but we use that as a big filter. I also mentioned earlier that we probably do have a bias towards postdocs. I say that in a positive way, that we've had such good experience that counts for a lot, and PhDs more than masters, and we do like that diversity of programs. So if you having lots of different majors or departments can help as well.
Okay, great. A couple of other questions. One is from Kelly Reardon. Sliders, what is drawing students out of their labs and into this program besides your glowing testimonials? How are you marketing? How are you marketing the program?
Yes, what we like many of you, when you run programs, that first year when we did this, it was probably the most stressful, because there's a little bit of like, I'm going to invite everybody to a party and I don't know if anyone's going to show up. And that was, the first year where we said, we're going to do this. And, we got 30 people. And we may have actually admitted everybody who applied that first year. So what we do though to market it is we do a lot of email marketing through just blanketing all of the grad students. Now that we've gotten it established, we go back to all of the faculty sponsors that have sent students in the past to say, oh, by the way, we're holding it again this year. And most of them have heard from the students that it was a really positive experience, so they will pass that along. In fact, we have some faculty members that will tell their students this is something you need to do. They are very more than just a proponent. They're feel very strongly this is something their students need to do while they're at Wisconsin. We also work with some of these different student groups or organizations so that for more targeted aspect of it, and we go back to our alumni. We find that's actually a very good source, because they're in that circle. They are when we say, hey, if you know of anyone, at the bench over, or in your year or in your department that would enjoy this, please do so. Pass this along to them, and that's how we've really gotten, I'd say, the marketing wheel. It works quite well now that we've got that established, but it was pretty nerve-wracking that first year in particular.
Okay, question from Charutta. Is this an opportunity to recruit PhD students for entrepreneurship and innovation?
It is probably, if they're, I'll answer that question kind of two ways. If it's actually recruiting someone to get their PhD in business and entrepreneurship, we haven't really used it for that at all. That's an interesting question, if we could. If it's a way to kind of get these STEM PhDs interested in entrepreneurship, very much. And I think there's the recruiting side of it is something that we're just starting to take advantage of, that knowing that this program is out there. If you're a student looking at Wisconsin versus a different university and you want to get your PhD in, actually, one of the professors that in chemistry is like, oh, this is something that'll differentiate us from the other institutions. So when our grad students, when they have their recruiting week, this is one of the things they talk about, is that this is a program that is available to their students. So I think it definitely has a recruiting angle in that part of campus.
Okay, question from Rajasekhar. I think he'd like to know a little bit more about the modules that you use. Can you go back to that slide and maybe go through some of the modules that you use and why you pick some of those? Because it's just about a week that you have, so they must be strategic in what you do.
Yes.
So the topics that you cover,
Yeah, and this is one that in a week you can only cover so much, and you're always going to say, oh, it would be nice to have this. We try to start the week with a little more of the kind of creativity and problem recognition, and I'd say lean startup, talking to customers, the very customer focused, and I'll say kind of a couple important topics that we cover early, beyond the pivoting, which I think is important. We do discuss the technology evolution, and I always found this to be one of the more interesting aspects of working with this audience of students, is that they're so smart. I'm always amazed how smart they are. And yet, when you kind of ask the question of, what's more important, good technology or solving a customer problem in a startup, their bias coming in is very much like, oh, the best technology always wins. And they're more than, and you share some examples of, we had one entrepreneur speak in the session, and she was actually part of the team in the lab that did Dolly, the sheep that got cloned. That was probably 20-30 years ago now, but that was big news. Dolly the sheep that was cloned. It was the first I think major cloned animal, and talked about how the professor involved with that kind of started there's that technology ended up being starting a business that failed, failed. And there are lots of examples where someone wins the Nobel Prize and then their business, does not succeed. So the fact that the examples of, well, you just need to solve a customer problem and some of the trade-offs is, I think, a real important one for them to understand early, and how you could apply some of these technologies to solve problems is the sweet spot and the advantage they have. We then try to kind of shift into a bit on the IP and the financing side. Financing is just something they find very interesting and also very daunting. But once they understand what goes into that and what some of the resources are, they get a lot of confidence in I'd say a short period of time. And WARF does a great job with the IP kind of training and how that would work, especially if you're at Wisconsin. Then we try to shift into more of, well, what do you do when you're building out your business? So how do you build the team, the culture, hiring people, and negotiation. There's probably one of the other unique aspects of it that I would highly recommend in really almost any entrepreneurship is negotiation training is something that's very valuable in life. I mean, it's true, you talk about a life skill, you're always negotiating, and even more so in entrepreneurship. And also I would say it's easy to teach, but it's really, you can teach that and students, really love it and get a lot out of it because it's so actionable. It's very, very actionable, and also high energy too, because they're give them some of the framework concepts and then have them do an exercise. It's a learning experience, and then mixing in these. We really try to mix in the panels and the alumni panels to give them an opportunity to see people that are. That's very inspiring because often if you just read biographies about famous entrepreneurs, it can sometimes be daunting because they often are these larger than life individuals. It's like, which of us can really be Steve Jobs or Elon Musk? It's like, it's hard to say. I'm very similar to, them. Whereas when you bring in these alumni that are doing really interesting things, but are very much like them, that's very much, they can kind of see themselves in that person. And we are try to do a really good job of getting a lot of diversity when we bring in alumni, and I mean that in every possible dimension, from gender, race, to major, to field, to outcome, so that people can really see themselves in that as that person, as that entrepreneur.
Okay, maybe a couple of last question maybe.
Okay.
Let's see, you got follow-up mentoring for the people who come to the boot camp. Is there something that's it's an effective follow-up for them?
Yeah, the kind of the two areas, and probably the main thing is we try to move them towards the next steps and some of the resources on campus. So we do have actually a formal mentoring group, mentors that's affiliated with the university. It works in the community, and I also, personally end up doing a lot more mentoring because of students I've met in this. But I feel that's more of that's actually been I've gotten a lot more out of that than I've given, because there's such interesting people that have gone on and done lots of things. So after we do this every year, I will end up having students that will stop by and either pitch an idea or career advice as well. And then this We Solve group that got started by the alumni that does the consulting is actually, it's a kind of a quasi alumni group that also does a lot of mentoring, where they will bring in speakers, and they've got the alumni that have gone into different fields, that helps on those career counseling side, and then also some training on projects or business skills.
Great. I think we're out of time. A couple of other questions, but we won't have time for that. Ashwin, come in.
Hey, thank you, Krishna. Thank you so much, Dan. Really great presentation. Thank you all for attending this great webinar. We will have the recording of this webinar on our website shortly. And I also wanted to announce that our next webinar is going to be next Thursday, February 11th. And it's going to be a great webinar for students who wish to start a venture. It will be called the Startup Business Pitch Competition. What makes a winning pitch? And the presenter is a very experienced judge at many different winning pitch contests, and I think students will love this, as well as the faculty. So we look forward to having you in our second webinar on February 11th. You will be getting emails about that, so please mark your calendar. Again, thank you so much for all of you to attend this webinar, and thank you, Dan, for this great webinar.
Okay.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you, Krishna, for hosting it.
Thank you, Ashwin. Take care.